She was 7 months pregnant when his mistress spit directly in her face. And her husband? He laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an uncomfortable chuckle, a genuine, deep laugh, like it was the funniest thing he had ever seen. But here is what Grant Holbrook did not know.
Did you really think he loved you?
His billionaire
Never did,
father-in-law
you
had been
fool.
watching him for 2
Look at
years,
you now.
building a case, gathering evidence,
Richard,
waiting
please, you
for
have to help
exactly
me.
this moment.
They
And
have
what
the
happens
baby,
next?
and I don't know what
It does
to do.
not happen in a courtroom.
He's your son.
It happens at Grant's own press conference, in front of 200 journalists, on live television.
That is quite enough, Mr.
While
Hammond.
millions
We will
watch
take it
his
from here.
entire empire crumble in real time. The revenge is coming. And trust me, you are not ready for how brutal it gets. Stay with me until the end, because what happens at minute 75? That is when everything changes. This is the story of Caroline Webb and the revenge that shocked everyone. She was 7 months pregnant when the spit hit her face. Caroline Webb Holbrook stood frozen in the doorway of her husband's corner office, white roses scattered at her feet, watching the saliva slide down her cheek. Warm, deliberate, a violation so intimate, so calculated, that her brain simply refused to process it. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was her husband's laugh. Grant Holbrook sat in his leather executive chair, whiskey glass in hand, tie loosened, watching the scene unfold with the casual amusement of a man watching a mildly entertaining television show. His mistress stood between them, lips curved in triumph, and Grant laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an uncomfortable chuckle, a genuine, deep, rich laugh. The same laugh Caroline had fallen in love with 7 years ago. The same laugh that had echoed through their wedding reception. The same laugh that used to make her heart flutter with joy. Now it was aimed at her like a weapon, and it cut deeper than any knife ever could. But let me take you back to before everything shattered, back to the morning when Caroline Webb Holbrook still believed in her marriage, her husband, and the life they had built together. Because every tragedy has a beginning, and this one started with white roses. The alarm clock read 6:45 when Caroline opened her eyes. October 15th, their 4th wedding anniversary. Autumn sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains of their bedroom, painting golden stripes across the ceiling. She lay still for a moment, one hand resting on her swollen belly, feeling the familiar warmth of life growing inside her, 7 months pregnant, 30 weeks. Her daughter was the size of a cabbage now, according to the pregnancy app she checked religiously every morning. The baby kicked twice, strong and insistent. "Good morning, Mama. I am here. I am real." Carolyn smiled at the ceiling. Today was going to be perfect. She had been planning this surprise for weeks. White roses, 24 of them. Grant's favorite, a reservation at Maison Laurent, the French restaurant where they had their first date. The one where Grant had ordered for her in flawless French, and she had fallen a little bit in love with his sophistication. And she had a secret, a wonderful, precious secret she had been keeping for exactly 24 hours, which felt like 24 years. Yesterday's ultrasound had revealed the truth. They were having a girl. Grant wanted a boy. He had talked about teaching his son to play baseball, about father-son fishing trips, about carrying on the Holbrook name. But Caroline had seen his face light up whenever he talked about his nieces. She had watched him melt when babies smiled at him in restaurants. She knew deep in her heart that he would love a daughter just as much, maybe more. She turned to look at the other side of the bed. Empty. The sheets were cold. Grant had left early again. Big meeting, sweetheart. Critical negotiations. You understand, do not you? She always understood. That was what good wives did. Carolyn showered slowly, letting the warm water ease the ache in her lower back. Pregnancy had not been kind to her body. She had gained 42 pounds. Her ankles swelled by noon every day. Her face looked puffy in photographs. But Grant said she was glowing. Grant said pregnant women were beautiful. Grant said he loved her more now than ever. Grant said a lot of things. She chose her outfit carefully. The blue wrap dress that still fit over her belly, the one Grant had complimented 6 months ago at his company spring gala. "You look like the ocean," he had said, his hand on the small of her back. Beautiful and deep and full of mysteries. She had held on to those words, replayed them on difficult days, clung to them when he came home late, smelling like perfume that was not hers. Not that she suspected anything. Of course not. Grant traveled for business. He met with clients, female clients. That was normal. That was fine. She was not the jealous type. She was not paranoid. She was not crazy. She was just pregnant and hormonal and maybe a little bit insecure. The florist had done beautiful work. White roses, long stems, no brown edges, wrapped in cream silk ribbon. Caroline buckled them carefully into the passenger seat like precious cargo. The drive to Grant's office took 45 minutes through morning traffic. She hummed along to the radio, tapping her fingers on the steering wheel. Old love songs from their wedding playlist. The Righteous Brothers, Etta James, Frank Sinatra. Music from a more romantic era, Grant always said. Music that means something. Her phone rang through the car speakers. Daddy, Carolyn smiled and answered. Hi, Daddy. I am on my way to surprise Grant at the office. Wish me luck. There was a pause on the other end. When Richard Webb spoke, his voice carried something she could not quite identify. Sweetheart, are you happy? Really happy? The question caught her off guard. Of course I am happy. Why do you ask? Another pause. Longer this time. No reason. Just call me if you need anything. Anytime, day or night. Promise me. I promise, Daddy. I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. More than you know. The call ended. Carolyn frowned at the road ahead. That was strange. Her father had been making comments like that for months now. Little questions, gentle probes. Are you sleeping enough? Is Grant treating you well? Do you need anything? She had dismissed it as overprotectiveness. Richard Webb was many things: intimidating, demanding, a perfectionist who expected excellence from everyone around him. He was also the founder and CEO of Webb Industries, a self-made billionaire who had started with nothing and built an empire through sheer will and determination. Forbes profiled him annually. Business schools taught case studies about his strategies. Competitors spoke his name in hushed tones, usually right before they lost everything. But underneath all of that, he was her father. And fathers worried about their pregnant daughters. That was normal. That was fine. Carolyn pulled into the parking garage beneath the Holbrook Industries building. She gathered the roses carefully, checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, and headed for the elevator. The lobby gleamed with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. A massive chandelier hung from the vaulted ceiling, casting prismatic light across the reception desk. The building was a monument to Grant's success. 10 floors of offices, conference rooms, and corner suites. 300 employees who called him boss, a company he had built from the ground up. Well, built with a little help from her father's initial investment. But that was just seed money, Grant always said. The real growth came from his vision, his leadership, his relentless drive to succeed. The security guard at the front desk looked up as she approached. His name tag read Marcus. He had worked here since before their wedding, had attended the reception with his wife, had sent them a lovely crystal vase as a gift. Mrs. Holbrook. He smiled, though something in his eyes flickered. Something she almost missed. Are you sure you want to go up right now? Caroline laughed. Of course. Why would I not? Marcus hesitated. Just a moment. Then he nodded. No reason. Have a good day. Strange. Everyone was acting strange today. Caroline dismissed it and stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. The car began to rise. And in exactly 3 minutes, her entire world would shatter into a million pieces. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime under the 23rd floor. Executive level. Grant's domain. Carolyn had been here 100 times over the years. Lunch deliveries when he forgot to eat. Late-night coffee runs during crunch time. Proud appearances at holiday parties where everyone told her how lucky Grant was to have such a supportive wife. But something was different today. The reception area was elegant and understated, as always. Cream walls, modern art, a massive mahogany desk where Grant's executive assistant usually sat. But the desk was empty. Strange. Patricia was always at her desk. Had been for 8 years. Grant called her his right hand. She was the kind of woman who arrived before dawn and left after dark. The kind who knew where every file was kept and every skeleton was buried. Patricia being gone was like the sun failing to rise. Caroline walked past the empty station, her heels clicking against the polished hardwood floor. The sound echoed in the unusual silence. Where was everyone? The floor seemed deserted, no assistants bustling between offices, no phones ringing, no keyboards clacking. And then she heard it. Laughter, coming from Grant's corner office. His laugh, rich and warm and familiar, and another laugh, higher, sharper, musical in a practiced way. A woman's laugh. Caroline's steps slowed. Her heart began to beat faster. There was nothing wrong, she told herself. Grant had meetings all the time. Meetings with women. That it was normal. That was business. But something felt wrong, something in the air, something in the quality of that laughter. Too intimate, too comfortable, too much like the way he used to laugh with her. She reached the frosted glass door of his office. The name Grant Holbrook glinted in gold letters. Through the frosted glass, she could see shapes, movement, two figures close together. Too close. Her hand trembled as she reached for the handle. Do not be paranoid, she told herself. Do not be that wife, the jealous one, the crazy one, the one who sees betrayal in every shadow. She pushed open the door, and time stopped. The scene froze like a photograph. Like one of those moments that sears itself into your memory forever. Every detail perfectly preserved. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The smell of expensive cologne and even more expensive perfume. The half-empty glasses of whiskey on the mahogany desk. And Grant, her husband, the father of her unborn child, sitting in his leather executive chair with his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up. A woman sat on the edge of his desk, legs crossed, displaying several inches of tan thigh beneath a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her hand rested on Grant's chest. Casual, possessive, familiar. Caroline knew her. Brittany Mercer, Grant's college girlfriend, the one whose picture had fallen out of his yearbook when Caroline was helping him move into their first apartment together. Ancient history, Grant had promised when she asked about it. We were kids. It was never serious. Brittany had not aged a day since that yearbook photo. If anything, she had improved. Blonde hair perfectly highlighted, full lips that probably owed something to a skilled dermatologist, a body that showed no signs of ever having carried a child. The flowers slipped from Caroline's fingers. They hit the floor with a soft thud. White petals scattered across the dark carpet like snow, like tears, like the pieces of her heart beginning to crack. Grant did not stand. He did not reach for her. He did not even look guilty. He looked annoyed, inconvenienced, like she had interrupted something important. Caroline. His voice was flat, cold, a voice she barely recognized. You should have called first. Those words, so casual, so cruel, as if she were a stranger, as if she were not his wife of 4 years, standing there 7 months pregnant with his child. Brittany slid off the desk. She did not leave, did not look embarrassed, did not apologize. Instead, she smiled. A smile that cut like broken glass. Oh, look, Brittany's voice dripped with false sweetness. The broodmare is here. Broodmare. The word hit Caroline like a physical blow. She was not a wife to them, not a person, just a vessel, just a means to an end. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly. Protective, desperate. Grant. Caroline's voice came out smaller than she intended. Weaker. The voice of a woman who had already been defeated without knowing it. What is this? It was not really a question. She knew what it was. She had known for months probably. Had known and refused to know. Had seen the signs and convinced herself they meant nothing. The late nights, the business trips, the way he flinched when she touched him unexpectedly. The perfume on his collar that was not hers. The credit card charges she was not supposed to see. She had known. She just had not wanted to believe. Grant leaned back in his chair. He looked at Brittany, then at Caroline, then at the ceiling. Like this was all very tedious. Like her pain was boring him. This is not what it looks like, he said, the oldest lie in the world. The words every cheating husband has spoken since the beginning of time. Brittany laughed, that high, sharp sound that would haunt Caroline's nightmares for years. She walked toward Caroline slowly, deliberately, each step calculated, each movement designed to intimidate. She stopped inches from Caroline's pregnant belly, close enough that Caroline could smell her perfume, expensive and cloying, like flowers rotting in an overheated room. You really thought you could keep him? Brittany gestured at Caroline's stomach, her lip curled with disgust. With that? A baby? How pathetically desperate. Did you think getting knocked up would make him love you? The cruelty was breathtaking. The casualness of it, like destroying someone's world, was just a normal Tuesday afternoon activity. Grant, Carolyn's voice was steadier now, colder. Tell her to leave. She waited, watched her husband's face, waited for him to stand up, to defend her, to remember the vows he had made 4 years ago, to honor and protect, to love and cherish, for better or for worse. The silence stretched, 1 second, 2, 3. The clock on the wall ticked, ticked, ticked. Grant said nothing. He just sat there in his expensive chair, in his expensive suit, in his expensive office, and did absolutely nothing while his mistress tormented his pregnant wife. That silence told Caroline everything she needed to know. Brittany tilted her head, examined Caroline like a scientist examining an interesting specimen. Then she did something that Caroline would replay in her nightmares for years to come. She gathered the saliva in her mouth, slowly, deliberately, making sure Caroline could see exactly what she was doing, making sure the anticipation was part of the torture. Then she leaned forward and spit directly in Caroline's face. The warmth hit her cheek first, then the wetness, then the shock, the utter disbelief that this was actually happening, that another human being had actually done this to her, that her husband was watching it happen and doing nothing. Carolyn stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to process what had just occurred. Her hand rose halfway to her face but stopped there, suspended, paralyzed. Should she wipe it off? Should she acknowledge that it happened? Both felt impossible, so she just stood there, the spit sliding slowly down her cheek, her husband's mistress smiling at her like she had just won something precious. Her husband sitting in his chair, watching the whole scene with an expression of mild amusement. And then Grant laughed. Not a shocked laugh, not an uncomfortable laugh, not even a nervous laugh, a genuine laugh, deep and rich and real, like Brittany had just told the funniest joke he had ever heard. He laughed at his pregnant wife, standing there with spit on her face, and something inside Caroline Webb Holbrook broke. She did not cry, did not scream, did not attack. She just turned and walked out of that office, past the empty reception desk, into the elevator, down 23 floors, through the marble lobby, past Marcus, who would not meet her eyes, out into the parking garage. She did not remember any of it. The next thing she knew, she was sitting in her car, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles were white. The parking garage was cool and dim. It smelled like concrete and exhaust and despair. She sat there for what felt like hours. Her baby kicked. Once, twice, 3 times. I am here, Mama. I am real. Whatever else is a lie, I am true. Caroline finally started the car. Her hands were still shaking. The spit had dried on her cheek. She could still feel it, would feel it for days, weeks, months. A phantom sensation of humiliation that would not wash away no matter how many times she scrubbed her skin. She did not drive home. She could not face that house. The house Grant's money had bought. The house where the wrestling photos hung onto every wall. The house where she had believed she was building a future. Instead, she drove to the only place that felt safe. Meredith's apartment. Meredith Cole lived in a converted warehouse in the Arts District. Exposed brick walls, industrial windows, a fire escape that overlooked a community garden 4 stories below. It was the kind of apartment Caroline used to dream about before she married Grant and moved into a house with 6 bedrooms and a 3-car garage. She did not call ahead, just drove there on autopilot, parked in the loading zone, took the freighted elevator to the 4th floor, knocked on the door with a hand that would not stop trembling. Meredith answered in yoga pants and an oversized sweater. Her dark hair was piled in a messy bun. A coffee cup steamed in her hand. She took one look at Caroline's face, at the mascara tracks, at the damp spot on her cheek that had not quite dried. and her expression shifted from surprise to horror to something that looked almost like recognition. She said nothing, just set down the coffee, opened her arms, and Caroline fell into them. She cried for what felt like hours, great heaving sobs that racked her entire body. She cried until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen and her baby was kicking in protest at all the upheaval. Meredith held her through all of it, did not ask questions, did not offer platitudes, just held her and stroked her hair and made soft shushing sounds like a mother comforting a child. Finally, the tears stopped, not because Caroline felt better, because she had simply run dry. Meredith led her to the overstuffed couch, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders despite the warmth of the afternoon, made tea that Caroline would not drink, but holding the warm mug gave her hand something to do. "Tell me," Meredith said. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Tell me everything." So Caroline did. She told her about the office, about Brittany, about the spit, about Grant's laugh. She told her about the way he had looked at her, like she was nothing, like she was less than nothing, like 4 years of marriage and a baby on the way meant absolutely nothing to him. When she finished, the tea in her hands had gone cold. The afternoon sun had shifted, painting different shadows on the brick walls. The world outside kept moving, indifferent to the fact that her entire life had just imploded. Meredith sat across from her. Her face was carefully neutral, too neutral, like she was working hard to control her expression, like she was hiding something behind that calm facade. "Say something," Carolyn whispered. "I am going to kill him." I am serious, Carol. I am going to drive to that office, and I am going to wrap my hands around his throat and squeeze until his eyes pop out of his stupid, handsome face. That would land you in prison." "Worth it." The joke fell flat. Both women knew it. Caroline stared at the cold tea. Her reflection rippled on the surface. She looked like a ghost, pale and hollow and haunted. "He laughed," she said. The words caught in her throat. He watched her do it, and he laughed. Like it was funny. Like I was funny. Like our whole marriage was just one big joke that I was too stupid to understand. "You are not stupid. I feel stupid. I feel like the biggest fool who ever lived." Carolyn set down the mug, pressed her palms against her eyes. "How did I not see it? How did I not know?" "Because you loved him. Because you trusted him. Because that is what you are supposed to do with your husband. I should have known. The signs were all there. The late nights, the phone calls he took in other rooms, the way he looked at me sometimes, like he was bored, like I was disappointing him just by existing." "Carol, stop." The perfume on his shirts. I told myself it was from clients, from business lunches. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was letting pregnancy hormones make me crazy. She laughed, a broken sound. "Maybe I am crazy. Maybe this is all some hormonal delusion and tomorrow I will wake up and everything will be fine." Meredith moved to sit beside her, took her hands, squeezed them hard. "Look at me," she said. "Look at me, Caroline." Caroline looked. "You are not crazy. You are not delusional. What happened today was real. What he did was real, and none of it was your fault. But I should have." "No, stop. There is no should have. There is no could have. There is only what he did. He betrayed you. He humiliated you. He let another woman assault you while you are carrying his child. That is on him. All of it, none of it is your fault." The words sank in slowly, like water seeping into parched earth. Carolyn wanted to believe them, desperately wanted to believe that she was not the villain of this story. That night, Carolyn lay on Meredith's guest bed. The mattress was too soft. The pillows smelled like lavender fabric softener. Outside the industrial windows, the city hummed with life. Cars and conversations, and the distant wail of a siren. She stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks, counting the shadows, counting on all the ways her life had fallen apart in a single afternoon. "I am not crazy," she thought. "I know what I saw. I know what I felt on my face." Her baby kicked. Hard. Insistent. A reminder that whatever else was broken, this one thing was whole. This one thing was real. This one thing was worth fighting for. "I will not let him take you," Carolyn whispered to her belly. "I will not let anyone take you." But she had no idea how wrong she was about what Grant was planning. Morning came gray and reluctant. Rain streaked the industrial windows of Meredith's apartment. The city below was muted, wrapped in fog and the sound of tires on wet pavement. Carolyn had not slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it again. The spit, the laugh, the look on Grant's face. The images played on an endless loop. A horror film she could not escape. She found Meredith already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, crying. "Mare?" Carolyn rushed to her side. "What is wrong?" Meredith looked up. Her face was streaked with tears. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked like she had not slept either. "I have to tell you something," she said, "and you are going to hate me." "What are you talking about?" Meredith took a shaky breath. "I knew. About Brittany. I have known for 2 years." The words did not compute at first. Carolyn stared at her best friend of 10 years, the woman who had stood beside her at her wedding, the woman who had held her hair back during morning sickness, the woman she trusted more than anyone else in the world. "What?" "I saw them together at a hotel in Chicago. 2 years ago, that marketing conference Grant said was strictly business." 2 years. The words echoed in Caroline's head. 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. 2 years ago, she had been planning their second anniversary trip to Italy, picking out the perfect hotel in Florence, learning basic Italian phrases so she could order dinner without embarrassing herself. 2 years ago, she had been decorating the nursery for the first time, the pregnancy that did not stick, the baby she had lost at 11 weeks, the devastation that had nearly broken her. 2 years ago, Grant had held her while she cried over that lost pregnancy, had promised they would try again, had sworn that nothing would ever come between them. 2 years ago, he had been sleeping with Brittany Mercer. "You saw them," Caroline said. Her voice sounded far away, like someone else was speaking through her mouth. "In Chicago, at the hotel bar. I was there for a work thing, a totally random coincidence. I walked in and there they were, his hand on her thigh, her head on his shoulder, the way they looked at each other." Meredith wiped her eyes. "I knew, Carol. I knew right then what was happening. And you did not tell me. I wanted to. I picked up the phone 100 times. But Grant, he found out I had seen them. He came to my apartment the next day, said I had misunderstood, said Brittany was an old friend who was going through a hard time, said she needed comfort and he was just being supportive. And you believed him?" "No, but then he said something else." Meredith's face twisted with pain. "He said you were fragile, that you were still recovering from the miscarriage, that news like this could push you over the edge. He said he was worried about your mental health, that you were already imagining things, seeing problems that were not there. He made me feel like telling you would hurt you more than staying silent." Gaslighting. The words surfaced in Caroline's mind like a creature emerging from dark water. She had read about it, had watched documentaries about manipulative relationships, had always thought she was too smart to fall for something like that. But Grant had not just been gaslighting her. He had been gaslighting everyone around her too, creating a narrative where she was unstable, where her perceptions could not be trusted, where anyone who tried to warn her would seem like they were causing harm rather than preventing it. "He made you doubt what you saw," Caroline said slowly. "He made you think protecting me meant keeping me ignorant. I should have told you anyway. I should have trusted you to handle the truth. I should have—" "Stop!" Carolyn held up her hand. She walked to the window, stared out at the rain, silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. "You should have told me. I know, I would have believed you. I know." Caroline turned to face her friend. Meredith looked broken, genuinely, completely broken. This was not the face of a traitor. This was the face of a woman who had been scared, who had made the wrong choice, who had been manipulated just like Caroline had been. "I do not know if I can forgive you," Caroline said, "but I need you right now. Can you help me?" Meredith nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Anything. I will do anything." Caroline needed clothes, documents, her grandmother's jewelry, simple things, basic necessities. She drove to her house, the house she had shared with Grant for 4 years, the house where she had believed she was building a life. She used her key, turned the lock, pushed open the door, and found Brittany Mercer standing in her living room, wearing Caroline's robe. drinking from Caroline's coffee mug, sitting in Caroline's chair. "Oh, you are back." Brittany smiled that same cruel smile from the office. "Grant said you might stop by." "What are you doing in my house? Our house now." Brittany set down the mug and stood, stretched like a cat waking from a nap. "Did Grant not tell you? He asked me to move in, said you would not be needing the space anymore." Caroline's blood ran cold. "You cannot be serious." Brittany walked toward her, slow, deliberate, each step designed to intimidate. "Your clothes are in boxes by the garage. The ugly ones, anyway. I kept a few pieces that might work for me. Oh, and I redecorated the nursery. Pink was so tacky. I went with gray, much more sophisticated. The nursery, the room Caroline had spent months decorating, the room with the hand-painted butterflies on the walls, the room with the antique rocking chair that had belonged to her grandmother, the room where she had imagined singing lullabies to her daughter. You had no right," Caroline whispered. "I have every right." Brittany stepped closer. So close, Caroline could smell her perfume again. That cloying, rotting floral scent. "I'm going to be Mrs. Holbrook soon. This is going to be my house, my nursery, my life." She leaned in. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And there is nothing you can do about it. You are just the incubator. Once that baby is born, Grant will have what he needs, and you will be thrown away like the garbage you are. Get out. You get out. This is not your home anymore, Caroline. You should probably go now. Grant will be home soon, and he really does not want to see you." Caroline stood there for a long-wished moment. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. Every instinct screamed at her to fight back, to slap that smile off Brittany's face, to defend her territory like a mother wolf defending her den. But she was 7 months pregnant, alone, outmaneuvered. She turned and walked away. Brittany's laughter followed her out the door. The hospital was supposed to be safe. The doctor's office was supposed to be a place of healing, of care, of protection for her and her baby. Carolyn arrived for an emergency appointment. The stress of the past 2 days was affecting the pregnancy. She needed to make sure her daughter was okay. The receptionist smiled when she walked in, but the smile faded quickly. "Mrs. Holbrook, there has been a change to your file." "What kind of change?" The receptionist shifted uncomfortably, glanced at her computer screen. "Your husband called this morning. He has requested to be listed as the primary medical contact. He said you are experiencing a mental health crisis, and he will be making medical decisions for the baby from now on." Carolyn felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. "He cannot do that. I am the mother. I am sorry." He faxed over documentation. A letter from a psychiatrist. A Dr. Harrison? Caroline's blood ran cold. Dr. Harrison, her own therapist, the woman she had been seeing for 2 years, the woman she had trusted with her deepest fears, her worst anxieties, her most vulnerable moments. "Dr. Harrison is my therapist," Caroline said slowly. "The letter states you are experiencing a psychotic episode, that you are a danger to yourself and the baby. I am sorry, but until this is sorted out legally, we cannot proceed with your appointment without your husband's consent. He bought my therapist." The words came out louder than she intended. People in the waiting room turned to look. "Mrs. Holbrook, please lower your voice. He paid her to lie about me. Do you understand? He paid my own therapist to write a false report so he could take control of my pregnancy." The receptionist reached for the phone. "I am going to have to ask you to leave. You cannot kick me out. I need to see my doctor. My baby might be in danger." "Security is on the way. Please wait outside." Carolyn stood there stunned, humiliated, terrified. A security guard appeared, polite but firm. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me." She was escorted out of the building like a criminal, like a crazy person, like exactly the kind of unstable woman Grant was painting her to be. There was one more person who might help. One more avenue of hope. Diane Holbrook, Grant's mother. Carolyn had never been close to her mother-in-law, but surely the woman would see reason. Surely she would not want her grandchild raised by a man who had spit on his pregnant wife. Caroline called from her car, hands still shaking, voice still trembling. Diane answered on the third ring. "Caroline, dear, Grant told me you might call." "Diane, please. You have to believe me. Grant is having an affair. His mistress spit in my face. He is trying to take my baby. There was a long pause on the other end. When Diane spoke, her voice was cool, distant, completely unsurprised. Caroline, men have needs. It is unfortunate, but it is reality. My own husband had his companions. I learned to look the other way. A wife's job is to maintain the home, raise the children, and not make scenes. Carolyn could not believe what she was hearing. She spit in my face, Diane, while Grant laughed. Well, perhaps if you had not let yourself go during the pregnancy, men like Grant need wives who make an effort. Are you serious right now? My advice? Go home. Apologize to Grant. Accept that Brittany is part of his life now. Focus on the baby. In a few years, when you have given him an heir, things will settle down. I am not going to just accept. Do not be dramatic, Caroline. This is how the world works. This is how it has always worked. The sooner you accept that, the easier your life will be. Click. Diane hung up. Carolyn sat in her car in the hospital parking lot, rain streaming down the windshield, her world collapsing around her. She had no home. Grant had given it to his mistress. She had no doctor. Grant had taken control of her medical care. She had no ally. Grant's own mother had blamed her for being cheated on. She had $47 in her wallet. Her bank accounts were frozen. Her credit cards were canceled. Her own therapist had sold her out. She was 7 months pregnant, alone, penniless, painted as crazy by everyone who was supposed to protect her. Rock bottom, she thought. This is what rock bottom feels like. But she was wrong. Rock bottom was still coming. That night, in a cheap motel room that smelled like mildew and broken dreams, her phone rang. Grant. She should not have answered. She knew she should not have answered. But some part of her still hoped, still believed, still clung to the fantasy that this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Ready to come home yet? His voice was casual, almost cheerful, like he was asking if she wanted pizza for dinner. Why are you doing this? Because I can. Grant laughed softly. Because no one will believe you. Because I have spent 4 years making sure everyone thinks you are unstable. The anxiety you confided in me about? Documented. The crying spells after your miscarriage? Documented. Every fear, every weakness, every breakdown you ever had? All of it filed away for exactly this moment. You planned this from the beginning. I planned everything from the beginning. Caroline's hand trembled on the phone. You were never the goal, Caroline. Your father's money was the goal. You were just the access point. And now that you are carrying my child, I have all the leverage I need. Caroline felt sick. Here is what is going to happen, Grant continued. You are going to have a very public breakdown. You are going to be declared unfit. I am going to get custody of our child. And then I am going to use that child to negotiate with your father. He will pay anything to see his grandchild. Billions, Caroline, billions. My father will destroy you. Grant laughed again, louder this time. Your father does not even know what is happening. You have barely spoken to him in 4 years. Who do you think encouraged that distance? Who do you think convinced you he was controlling and toxic? The silence stretched, the depth of the manipulation crashed over Caroline like a wave. 4 years, 4 years of isolation, 4 years of being slowly cut off from everyone who loved her. 4 years of being made to believe that her father was the enemy. All so Grant could use her to steal billions. Come home, Grant said, or do not. Either way, I win. Click. Carolyn sat on the edge of the motel bed. The springs creaked beneath her weight. The carpet was stained with mysteries she did not want to identify. The walls were thin enough that she could hear the television in the next room. Some game show, laughter, applause. The world kept spinning. People kept living their normal lives, while hers fell apart in this dingy room with its cigarette smell and its flickering light. She looked at her phone, her contacts list. One name seemed to glow brighter than the others. Daddy. She had not asked him for help in years. Grant always found a way to make her feel guilty for needing her father. Made her feel like reaching out to Richard was a betrayal of their marriage, a sign that she did not trust Grant to provide for her, a weakness. But Grant was wrong about one thing. Carolyn and Richard had never stopped loving each other. The distance was physical, not emotional. Every Sunday call, even the ones where Grant hovered nearby, and she had to pretend everything was fine. Every single call reminded her that her father was there, waiting, hoping, ready. She pressed call. One ring. Richard answered immediately. Carolyn? His voice was alert, wide awake despite the late hour, like he had been sitting by the phone, waiting for exactly this moment. Daddy. The word came out small, broken. The voice of a little girl who had scraped her knee and needed her father to make it better. Daddy, I need help. The story spilled out of her, disjointed, desperate. She told him about the office, about Brittany, about the spit, about Grant's laugh. She told him about the affair that had been going on since 6 weeks after their wedding, about Meredith knowing for 2 years, about Brittany moving into her house, about the hospital, about her therapist being paid to lie, about Diane blaming her, about Grant's phone call, about everything. When she finished, the line was silent for 11 seconds. She counted them, each one an eternity. Where are you? Richard finally asked. Exactly. Hampton Motel, room 12. Stay there. Do not move. Do not answer the door for anyone except my people. They will identify themselves with our family code word. Starlight, Caroline whispered. The word Richard had used since she was a little girl. Their secret, their safety signal. That is right. Starlight. Stay there, sweetheart. Help is coming. Daddy, I am so sorry. You tried to warn me about him and I... Caroline, listen to me very carefully. His voice changed, became something else entirely. Something calm. Too calm. The voice of a man who had been waiting for this exact moment. I have been investigating Grant Holbrook for 2 years. Caroline's breath caught. 2 years ago, I received an anonymous letter, Richard continued. It warned me that Grant was not who he appeared to be, that he was cheating on you, that he was planning something terrible. At first, I wanted to dismiss it. Grant was family. He was the father of my grandchild. I did not want to believe it, but you believed it. I believed it was worth investigating. Quietly, discreetly. I hired the best people, former FBI, private investigators, forensic accountants. I have been building a case, Caroline, waiting for you to come to me. I did not want to push. I was afraid I would push you further away. But I never stopped watching. I never stopped preparing. Caroline felt tears streaming down her face. He thinks he is untouchable, Richard said. He thinks his money and his charm will protect him. He has no idea what is coming. What are you going to do? I'm going to destroy him, sweetheart. Completely. Publicly. So thoroughly that he will never recover. His voice hardened into something that made Caroline understand for the first time why people feared her father. And I am going to enjoy every second of it. The next morning, Richard's team arrived at the motel. The first through the door was a man named Vincent Marshall, former FBI, granite face, eyes that saw everything and gave away nothing. He was the head of security for Webb Industries, and he had been leading the investigation into Grant for 2 years. Behind him came Theodore Ashford, family attorney, silver-haired, impeccably dressed. The kind of lawyer who could destroy a man in court while making it look like a friendly conversation. And behind Ted came someone Caroline did not expect. Patricia Dunn, Grant's secretary. The woman who had been at his side for 8 years. The woman who knew where every file was kept and every skeleton was buried. The woman whose empty desk had been Caroline's first warning sign that something was wrong. Patricia? Caroline stared at her in confusion. What are you doing here? Patricia set down a heavy briefcase, opened it to reveal hundreds of documents. Thumb drives, photographs, 8 years of evidence, carefully collected, meticulously organized. I have been waiting 8 years for someone brave enough to take him down, Patricia said. Her voice was steady, but Caroline could see the pain beneath it. The anger, the determination. Grant fired my daughter last year. Know why? Because she would not sleep with him. When she threatened to report him, he blackmailed her with photos he had secretly taken of her in the office. Intimate photos, humiliating photos. He used them to destroy her reputation. She tried to kill herself. She is still in therapy. Patricia looked at Caroline with eyes full of righteous fury. I started copying his files the next day. Every email, every payment, every affair, every fraud. I have it all, and I have been waiting for the right moment to use it. The evidence was devastating. Grant had been cheating since 6 weeks after the wedding. Not just with Brittany, with 4 other women too, each one carefully managed, each one believing she was special, each one discarded when she became inconvenient. He had stolen $2.4 million from Caroline's trust fund, the money her grandmother had left her. He had funneled it through shell companies, saying they become all companies, hidden it in accounts only he could access, replaced the real statements with fake ones showing healthy balances. He had paid Dr. Harrison $50,000 to provide false psychiatric evaluations. Every therapy session Caroline had attended, every fear she had shared, every vulnerable moment had been documented and weaponized against her. He had been committing securities fraud for years. Fake financials, misled investors. The company that was supposed to be his great achievement was built on lies and stolen money. And worst of all, there were recordings. Vincent pulled up an audio file on his laptop. Grant's voice filled the room. If she becomes a problem, we make her disappear. Nothing traceable. Nothing that leads back to me. Brittany knows people. People who handle problems. The recording continued. Grant discussing how to stage Caroline's breakdown. How to take custody of the baby. How to use that child as leverage against Richard Webb. He threatened my daughter's life, Richard said. His voice was quiet. Terrifyingly quiet. We have him on conspiracy, Vincent confirmed. That is federal, 20 years minimum. Caroline looked at the mountain of evidence, at the team her father had assembled, at the web of crimes that Grant had been building for years, never suspecting that someone was watching. Someone was documenting. Someone was waiting. So what do we do, she asked. Go to the police? Richard shook his head. No, the police are too slow. Grant has lawyers, connections, resources. By the time the courts move, he will have destroyed you publicly. He will have painted you as the crazy ex-wife. He will have won the narrative. Richard smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Caroline had ever seen. We are going to give him exactly what he wants, a public stage, and then we are going to use it to destroy him in front of the entire country. The safe house was a brownstone in a quiet neighborhood, 3 stories, secure entrance, a security team that changed shifts every 8 hours. Carolyn spent the next 3 days there, learning the truth about her marriage, learning the depth of Grant's crimes, learning just how thoroughly she had been deceived. Patricia walked her through the evidence file by file, email by email, transaction by transaction. The shell companies had clever names: Sunrise Holdings, Coastal Ventures, Webb Legacy Trust. That last one was particularly cruel, named after her own family while being used to steal from her. He started the day after your wedding, Patricia explained. The first transfer was small, $10,000, testing the waters, seeing if anyone would notice. And no one did, Caroline said. He intercepted your statements, changed your email passwords, created fake accounts that looked identical to the real ones. Every month you thought you were getting a legitimate bank statement, but it was fabricated, a pretty picture designed to keep you ignorant. Carolyn stared at the documents. The numbers blurred together. 4 years of lies, 4 years of theft, 4 years of marriage to a man who saw her as nothing more than an access point to her father's wealth. What about the other women? Patricia pulled up another folder. Photographs, text messages, hotel receipts, Victoria Patterson, senator's daughter. Their affair lasted 8 months. She thought he was going to leave you for her. When she got pregnant, he paid for the abortion and then ghosted her. Carolyn felt sick. Margaret Collins, marketing executive. 2 years. He used her for industry connections. When she started talking about marriage, he had her transferred to the Singapore office. She has not been back to the States since. And there were more, each one a story of manipulation, love bombing, false promises, and eventual discard. He has a pattern, Patricia said. He finds women who are useful, women who have something he wants, access, connections, money. He makes them believe they are special, makes them believe he loves them. And then, when he has extracted everything of value, he throws them away, just like he is trying to do to me, exactly like he is trying to do to you, but you have something the others did not. What? A father who saw through him, a father who has been preparing for this moment for 2 years, A father who was about to make Grant Holbrook wish he had never been born. The plan came together over the next 48 hours. Richard had sources everywhere, in Grant's company, in the financial institutions, in the media outlets that would carry the story. He even had someone inside Grant's legal team. Grant has called a press conference, Vincent reported on day 3. Tomorrow afternoon, he is going to go public with the story of his mentally unstable wife. He is going to paint himself as the victim, the concerned husband, the father fighting for his unborn child. Richard nodded slowly. Perfect. How is that perfect? Carolyn asked. He is going to destroy my reputation on national television. No. Richard's smile was cold. He is going to give us a stage. 200 journalists, 20 camera crews, live broadcast on 3 networks. The whole country watching. He leaned forward. And right when he thinks he has won, right when he is basking in the sympathy of millions, we are going to walk through those doors and show the world exactly who Grant Holbrook really is. Caroline stared at her father. You want to ambush his own press conference? I want to destroy him in the same venue he planned to use to destroy you. Poetic justice. But how? He will have security, his own people. Richard exchanged a look with Vincent. I bought the security company he hired 6 months ago. They work for me now. You what? It was an investment, Richard said casually. A good one, as it turns out. Their people will let us through. Grant will not know until it is too late. Carolyn felt something stirring inside her, something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. There is one more thing, Richard said. He pulled out his phone, showed her a video, security footage. Crystal clear, high definition. The spit scene. Every moment captured. Brittany's approach, the gathering of saliva, the deliberate aim, the spit landing on Caroline's face, and Grant's laugh. That camera was installed by Patricia 3 months ago, Richard explained. Grant never knew it was there. He thought the only security footage was the official system, which he controlled. But Patricia added a backup, just in case. Caroline watched herself on the screen. The humiliation, the shock, the devastation. But this time she did not feel shame, she felt power. That video was going to destroy Grant Holbrook, and the whole world was going to watch. The night before the press conference, Caroline could not sleep. She stood at the window of the safe house, looking out at the city lights, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Richard joined her. Nervous, he asked. Terrified? Good. That means you are taking it seriously. They stood in silence for a moment. Daddy, Caroline said, I need to do something tomorrow, at the press conference. What do you mean? I need to speak. Myself, not just watch while you and Vincent present the evidence. I need to look Grant in the eye and tell him what he did to me. I need to reclaim my own voice. Richard studied her face. Are you sure? It will not be easy. 200 journalists, cameras everywhere. Grant will be right there, I know. But for 4 years, Grant controlled my narrative. He decided what I thought about myself, what I believed, what I feared. He made me small, made me doubt everything. She straightened. Tomorrow, I am taking that back. I am going to stand in front of the whole world and show them who I really am. Not the crazy wife Grant invented. The real me, the survivor. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. A real smile. Proud. Warm. You sound like your mother, he said softly. I will take that as a compliment. It is the highest compliment I know how to give. He put his arm around her shoulders. Get some sleep, sweetheart. Tomorrow we go to war. Grant Holbrook woke up on the morning of his press conference feeling invincible. He stood in front of the mirror of his master bathroom, the bathroom that had been Caroline's just a week ago. Now Brittany's things covered every surface. Her makeup, her perfumes, her silk robe hanging on the back of the door. He smiled at his reflection. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, perfect suit. The picture of a concerned husband fighting for his family. The narrative was set. The journalists were primed. His lawyer had prepared a statement that painted him as the victim of a vindictive wife from a powerful family. Poor Grant, manipulated by the webs. Poor Grant, just trying to protect his unborn child. By the end of the day, public opinion would be firmly on his side. Caroline would be ruined. Richard Webb would have no choice but to negotiate. Billions of dollars would flow into Grant's accounts. Everything was going according to plan. Brittany appeared in the doorway. She was wearing one of Caroline's dresses, a designer piece that cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Ready for your big moment?" she asked. "More than ready." Grant adjusted his tie. "By tonight, we will own this city." "And Caroline?" "Caroline will be a footnote, a cautionary tale about what happens when unstable women make accusations they cannot prove." He crossed to Brittany, kissed her forehead. "You were magnificent, by the way." The spit was inspired. Really sold the narrative of my crazy wife. Brittany smiled, pleased with herself. "I have been waiting years to put that woman in her place. And now she is in her place. Alone, broke, publicly humiliated. By the time we are done, no one will ever believe a word she says." Grant checked his watch. "Time to go. History awaits." The grand ballroom of the Holbrook Industries building was transformed. 200 journalists filled the seats. 20 camera crews lined the walls. Live broadcast feeds were set up for 3 major networks. Grant stood backstage, reviewing his notes. His lawyer beside him, his PR team running final checks. Everything was perfect. The podium gleamed under the lights. The massive screens behind it displayed the Holbrook Industries logo. The air hummed with anticipation. "5 minutes," someone called. Grant straightened his jacket, took a deep breath. This was his moment, his triumph, the culmination of 4 years of careful planning. He was about to destroy Caroline Webb and claim everything he had ever wanted, and he had no idea that his own destruction was walking through the lobby at that very moment. Richard Webb arrived at the Holbrook Industries building at exactly 2:45. He was not alone. Behind him came Caroline, pale but determined, 7 months pregnant but standing tall. Behind her came Vincent Marshall, former FBI, stone-faced, carrying a briefcase full of evidence. Behind Vincent came Patricia Dunn, 8 years of secrets in her hands. Behind Patricia came Theodore Ashford, legal documentation for every crime Grant had ever committed. And behind Ted came 4 women, Victoria Patterson, Margaret Collins, Lisa Rodriguez, and one more, each one with their own folder of evidence, each one ready to tell their story. The security guards at the door looked up as they approached. One of them, a man named Johnson, nodded almost imperceptibly. "Right this way, Mr. Webb. The ballroom is through those doors." Richard smiled. "Thank you." They walked through the marble lobby, past the massive chandelier, past the reception desk where Marcus had once given Caroline a strange look, past all the trappings of Grant's success, heading straight for the ballroom, heading straight for the moment that would shock the entire country. Inside the ballroom, Grant was just beginning his speech. "Thank you all for coming," he said. His voice was smooth, practiced, sincere. "As you know, my family is going through a challenging time. My wife Caroline has been struggling with mental health issues throughout her pregnancy. 3 days ago, she fled our home in a confused state. She has been making wild accusations." He paused for effect, dabbed at his eyes with a handkerchief. "I love my wife. I want nothing more than to help her get the care she needs. But she has fallen under the influence of her father, Richard Webb, who has always resented our marriage. He is using her instability to attack me, to attack our family, to attack our unborn child." The cameras flashed. The journalists scribbled in their notebooks. Grant was in his element. This was what he did best: manipulating, convincing, making people believe whatever he wanted them to believe. "I am here today to set the record straight, to show you who I really am: a devoted husband, a concerned father, a man who just wants what is best for—" The doors at the back of the ballroom banged open. Grant stopped mid-sentence. Richard Webb walked in, and Grant's world began to end. The ballroom fell silent. 200 journalists turned to see who had interrupted. 20 camera crews swung their equipment toward the doors. The live broadcast feeds captured every moment. Richard Webb strode toward the front of the room with the calm confidence of a man who had already won. Behind him came his entourage: Caroline, Vincent, Patricia, Theodore, and the 4 women Grant did not recognize. Grant's face went from confident to confused to terrified in the space of 3 seconds. This is a private press conference, he said. His voice cracked slightly. Security! Richard smiled. I own the security company you hired, Grant. I bought them 6 months ago. They work for me now. Grant looked at the guards standing along the walls. None of them moved. He was alone, surrounded by enemies he had created. Richard reached the front of the room. He stood facing the journalists, his back to Grant, completely dismissing him. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, my name is Richard Webb. Grant Holbrook is my son-in-law, and I am here to show you exactly what kind of man he is. Richard, Grant sputtered, this is insane. You cannot just... I can. I am, and you are going to stand there and watch, Richard signaled to Vincent. The massive screens behind the podium flickered. The Holbrook Industries logo disappeared, and the video began to play. Security footage, crystal clear, high definition, Grant's office, afternoon sunlight, two figures by the desk. The room watched as Brittany had approached Caroline, watched as she hurled insults at a pregnant woman, watched as she gathered saliva in her mouth, slowly, deliberately, watched as she spit in Caroline's face, watched as Grant laughed. The video played 3 times. By the third repetition, some journalists had turned away. Others were openly crying. The horror of what they were seeing was visceral, undeniable. That was my daughter, Richard said when the video finally stopped. 7 months pregnant, spat on by this woman while her husband laughed. He let the silence stretch. But that is not why I am here. Assault is a matter for the police, and they will handle Miss Mercer shortly. I am here because what you just saw is the least of Grant Holbrook's crimes. Grant's lawyer was already edging toward the exit. Grant himself stood frozen at the podium, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to do anything but watch as his entire world collapsed. Richard pulled out a thick folder. Let me show you what else we found. The evidence came in waves. First, the affairs. 4 women stepped forward, one by one, each with her own folder, her own documentation, her own story of love bombing and manipulation and eventual discard. Victoria Patterson spoke first, her voice trembling but clear. He told me I was the love of his life. He told me he was going to leave his wife. When I got pregnant, he made me get an abortion. Then he stopped returning my calls. I have not heard from him since. Margaret Collins was next. 2 years. He used me for my industry connections. When I started talking about a future together, he had me transferred to Singapore. I have not been home in 3 years. Lisa Rodriguez followed. I was his graduate student. He promised to help my career. Instead, he took photographs of me without my consent and used them to ensure my silence. And finally, the 4th woman, younger than the others. More hesitant, I was an intern. I thought he loved me. I thought I was special. She broke down, could not continue, but she did not have to. The pattern was clear. Grant Holbrook was a predator, a serial manipulator, a man who collected women like trophies and discarded them like trash. And the evidence was just beginning. Richard pulled out financial documents next. These are records of transactions from my daughter's trust fund, $2.4 million, stolen over 4 years, funneled through shell companies with names like Webb Legacy Trust. He held up the papers. Grant forged my daughter's signature, intercepted her bank statements, replaced them with fabricated versions. She had no idea her inheritance was being drained until we began this investigation. Journalists were furiously taking notes. Cameras flashed. Grant's face had gone gray, and it still was not over. Richard produced audio recordings. This is a conversation from 3 months ago. Between Grant and an associate, the audio played. Grant's voice filled the room. If she becomes a problem, we make her disappear. Nothing traceable, nothing that leads back to me. Brittany knows people, people who handle problems. Gasps from the audience. My son-in-law discussed murdering my daughter, Richard said. His voice was ice. He discussed it casually, like he was ordering lunch. The ballroom erupted. Questions shouted from every direction. Camera flashes like strobe lights. The controlled environment of Grant's press conference had become a feeding frenzy, and Grant stood at the center of it, frozen, destroyed. This is lies, he finally managed. This is all fabricated. Richard Webb has always hated me. He is using his money to destroy me because I married his daughter against his wishes. Richard nodded slowly. I anticipated that response. He gestured to Patricia. This is Patricia Dunn. She was Grant's executive assistant for 8 years. Patricia? Patricia stepped forward. Her face was calm. Her voice was steady. I have personally witnessed Mr. Holbrook's affairs, his financial manipulations, his threats against anyone who challenged him. I began documenting his crimes 2 years ago. Every email is authentic. Every recording is verified. Every document can be traced. She looked directly at Grant. You destroyed my daughter's life. You took photographs of her without consent and used them to silence her. She tried to kill herself because of what you did. Her voice hardened. Now I am returning the favor. Grant's lawyer had disappeared, slipped out through a side door while no one was watching. Grant himself looked around wildly, searching for an ally, a supporter, anyone who might stand with him. He found no one. Even Brittany, who had been seated in the front row, was trying to edge toward the exit. Vincent's team blocked her path. Miss Mercer, Vincent said calmly, you will want to stay for this part. Brittany froze, and Grant, in a final desperate gambit, did something that Caroline had predicted, something that revealed his true character more clearly than any evidence ever could. He turned on Brittany. I do not know what you are talking about, Grant said. His voice was high, panicked. Brittany was the one who approached my wife. I never asked her to do anything. She is obsessed with me. She has been stalking me for years. I am a victim here. Brittany's face transformed. From fear to disbelief to absolute rage. Are you serious right now? You told me to do it. You said it would help your custody case. You said she is clearly delusional, Grant interrupted. I barely know this woman. Brittany lunged at him. Security held her back. I have texts, Grant. I have everything you sent me. You said you loved me. You said you were going to marry me. She turned to the cameras. He planned everything. The affair, the custody scheme, making Caroline look crazy, all of it. I was just following his orders. The room exploded again. Grant's narrative was destroyed. His allies were gone. His mistress had turned on him. His secretary had exposed him. His crimes were laid bare before the entire country. And there was still one more person who needed to speak. Richard gestured to Caroline. There is one more person who deserves to be heard. Caroline walked toward the podium. Her legs were shaking. Her heart was pounding. 200 journalists, millions watching live. Grant standing right there, 3 feet away. But she did not hesitate. She stepped up to the microphone, and she spoke. 4 years ago, I married a man I thought loved me. Her voice was quiet at first, but it grew stronger with every word. I gave up my career for him, my independence, my confidence. I spent years making myself smaller, trying to fit into the life he designed for me, trying to be the wife he wanted, trying to earn the love he promised. She looked directly at Grant, and when I could not shrink any further, he decided to throw me away. Grant could not meet her eyes. You thought I was weak because I was kind, Carolyn continued. You thought I was stupid because I trusted. You thought you could spit in my face and I would just accept it. She straightened. You were wrong. Her voice rang through the silent ballroom. I am not weak. I am not stupid. And I am not going to let you take my daughter. Not now, not ever. She turned to face the cameras. To face the millions of people watching at home. To every woman out there who has been made to feel crazy by someone who was supposed to love her. You are not crazy. You are not imagining things. And you do not have to accept it. She took a breath. The prison door was unlocked all along. I was my own warden, serving a sentence Grant gave me. Walking out was never about finding the key. It was about admitting the door was always open. She stepped back from the podium, head high, victory complete. The FBI agents were waiting outside. They had been there for an hour, coordinating with Richard's team, waiting for the press conference to finish, waiting for the moment when Grant Holbrook's crimes were exposed to the entire nation. Now they entered the ballroom. Grant Holbrook, the lead agent announced, you are under arrest for securities fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Grant tried to run. There was nowhere to go. Agents surrounded him. Cameras captured every moment, the handcuffs clicked into place. "This is not over," Grant hissed as they led him past Caroline. "This is not over." Caroline looked at him, really looked at him, at the man she had married, the man she had trusted, the man she had believed loved her. He looked smaller now, diminished, the charm stripped away, the mask shattered, just a frightened man facing the consequences of his own cruelty. "Yes," she said quietly. "It is." They led him away. Grant Holbrook left his own building in handcuffs, his face broadcast on every network in the country. The cameras followed him all the way to the FBI vehicle, all the way to the end of his empire. Brittany was arrested separately. Assault on a pregnant woman, conspiracy, aiding and abetting. She screamed as they handcuffed her. "He made me do it. He told me to. I was just following orders." But the evidence was clear. The texts, the emails, the video of her spitting in Caroline's face with obvious relish. She had not been following orders. She had been enjoying herself, and now she was going to pay. In the weeks that followed, the full scope of Grant's crimes came to light. The financial fraud was worse than anyone had imagined. Hundreds of investors had been deceived. Millions of dollars were missing. The company that Grant had claimed to build from the ground up was nothing more than an elaborate Ponzi scheme, sustained by stolen money and fabricated returns. Dr. Harrison, Caroline's therapist, was arrested next. She had received $50,000 to provide false psychiatric evaluations, to document Caroline's non-existent mental illness, to create a paper trail that would support Grant's custody claim. Her medical license was revoked. She faced fraud charges. Her career was destroyed. The trials came months later, one by one. Grant, Brittany, and Harrison, and Caroline testified at each one. She told her story, again and again. The spit, the laugh, the years of manipulation, the plan to steal her child. Each time she stood taller, spoke clearer, felt stronger. The verdicts were delivered. Grant Holbrook, guilty of securities fraud, guilty of embezzlement, guilty of conspiracy, guilty of obstruction of justice, sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. All assets seized, no custody rights, no visitation until the child reached 18. Brittany Mercer, guilty of assault, guilty of conspiracy, sentenced to 3 years, disbarred from practicing law. The video of her spitting in Caroline's face would follow her forever. No amount of time served would erase that image from the public memory. Dr. Harrison, guilty of fraud, guilty of medical misconduct, sentenced to 5 years, medical license permanently revoked. She died in prison 8 months later. Heart attack, alone in her cell. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Grant was sitting in his cell, orange jumpsuit, hollow eyes, 3 months into his 15-year sentence. He had received no visitors, no letters, no calls. Everyone he had ever known had abandoned him. Even the lawyers who had taken his money had stopped coming once the money ran out. This was the first piece of mail he had received since the sentencing. His mother's handwriting on the envelope. His hands trembled as he opened it. "Grant, this is my final letter to you. For 38 years, I made excuses. I looked the other way. I told myself you would change, that you just needed more love, more support, more time. I was wrong. I enabled you. I helped create the monster you became. I remember when you were 8 years old, when I found you in the backyard with Marmalade, pulling out her fur, watching her cry, smiling. I told myself it was normal. Boys being boys, curiosity about animals. But I knew. Even then, I knew something was wrong with you. And I chose to ignore it. 30 years of ignoring, 30 years of excusing, 30 years of watching you hurt people and telling myself it was not that bad. Not anymore. You are no longer my son. Do not contact me. Do not mention my name. As far as I am concerned, I never had a child. I will spend the rest of my life carrying the guilt of what I allowed you to become. But I will not spend it carrying you. Goodbye." Diane Grant stared at the letter. No wife, no child, no money, no company, no reputation, no friends, no allies. And now, no mother. He was completely, utterly alone. And he would stay that way for the next 15 years. 1 year later, the house was small by Webb family standards. 3 bedrooms, White picket fence, a garden that needed work. But it was hers. Carolyn had bought it with her own money. The trust fund that had been recovered during Grant's trial. The funds that should have been lost forever, traced and seized and returned to their rightful owner. She had not wanted anything grand, not a mansion, not a penthouse, not a symbol of wealth or status, just a home, a real home, a place where she could build a new life, a place where her daughter could grow up loved and safe and free. The October sunlight filtered through the kitchen windows as Caroline made breakfast. Pancakes shaped like stars because Eleanor had decided that round pancakes were boring. Mama. The voice came from the doorway, small and bright and full of wonder. Eleanor Webb was 11 months old now, walking unsteadily but determinedly, talking in half-words and babbles, learning the world piece by piece. She had Caroline's eyes, her grandmother's smile, and nothing, absolutely nothing, of her father. "Good morning, baby girl." Caroline scooped her up, kissed her cheek. "Are you ready for pancakes?" "Stars," Eleanor said firmly, the way she said everything firmly. This was a child who knew what she wanted. "Stars it is." The doorbell rang. Meredith stood on the porch with flowers in a gift bag. "Happy anniversary," she said. "Anniversary of what?" 1 year since the press conference. 1 year since Grant's world fell apart. 1 year since you stood up in front of the whole country and took your life back. Caroline considered this. Has it really been a year? 365 days, I counted. They sat in the living room while Eleanor played on the floor, building towers with blocks and knocking them down with delighted shrieks. Meredith watched her with soft eyes. She is so big now. She is fearless. Tries to climb everything, falls down, gets right back up. She gets that from her mother. They shared a look. Understanding. Forgiveness. Not complete, perhaps. Some wounds left scars that never fully healed. But they had built something new on the foundation of what was broken. Something different. Perhaps stronger. "I saw the news about the foundation," Meredith said. 7,000 women helped so far. The Webb Foundation for Financial Abuse Survivors. Caroline's creation. Her legacy. The thing she was most proud of. 7,000 women who had been trapped in relationships like hers. Controlled through money. Isolated through manipulation. Made to feel crazy for trusting their own perceptions. 7,000 women who were now free. "Mom would have loved it," Carolyn said softly. "She would have been so proud of you." The afternoon sun was warm as Carolyn walked in her garden. Eleanor toddled beside her, stopping to examine every flower, every bug, every blade of grass. "Pretty," Eleanor said, pointing at a rose. "Very pretty. That one is called Eleanor. Just like you." Eleanor stared at the rose with the intense concentration of a child trying to understand something important. "Me flower? You are my flower. My beautiful, perfect flower." Richard arrived at 4 o'clock. He came every Sunday now, made up for the 4 years of distance that Grant had manufactured. 4 years of missed birthdays and phone calls cut short and questions she had been too afraid to ask. "Grandpa." Eleanor ran to him on unsteady legs. Richard scooped her up, swung her around, made her shriek with laughter. "How was my favorite granddaughter? Only granddaughter. Still my favorite." He carried her into the garden, sat beside Caroline on the bench she had installed near the rose bushes. "You look happy," he said. "I am happy." She paused. "It still surprises me sometimes. Happiness. Like I forgot what it felt like." "You remembered," Eleanor demanded to be put down. Ran off to chase a butterfly. Fell, got back up, kept running, fearless. The sun was setting when they gathered in the kitchen. Caroline and Richard and Meredith and Patricia, who had become something like family over the past year. Patricia had retired from corporate work. Now she volunteered at the foundation, helping other women navigate the system that had once been used against them. Eleanor had fallen asleep in her high chair, face covered in mashed peas, completely at peace. "I have something," Patricia said. She pulled out an envelope. "From my contact at the prison." Caroline tensed. "You do not have to read it," Patricia continued. "But I thought you should know." "What is it?" "A report." "On Grant." She paused. "He tried to kill himself last month." The room went silent. Caroline looked at the envelope. "Did not take it." "Did he succeed?" "No. They found him in time. He is on suicide watch now." Caroline considered this, tried to feel something, satisfaction, maybe, or horror, or grief for the man she had once thought she loved, and she felt nothing. He is not my concern anymore, she said finally. He has not been for a year. She turned to the window. Watch the last light of sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. I used to think about him every day. Wonder what he was doing. Wonder if he thought about me. Wonder if he regretted anything. She turned back to face them. Now I go weeks without thinking about him at all. He is just someone I used to know. Someone who tried to break me and failed. The night was quiet. Eleanor asleep upstairs. The house settling into darkness. Carolyn stood at the window of her bedroom, looking out at the stars. 1 year, 365 days since she had stood in that ballroom and reclaimed her voice. Since she had faced the man who tried to destroy her and told him he had failed. A year of healing, a year of building, a year of becoming someone new. Not the woman she was before Grant. That woman was gone, changed by everything she had survived. But someone better, stronger, wiser. She looked at the photo on her nightstand, her and Richard and Eleanor at the first birthday party. Everyone smiling, everyone happy. This was her family now. The family she had chosen, the family that had chosen her. The doorbell surprised her. 10 o'clock at night. No one came by this late. She checked the security camera, saw a face she did not expect. Diane Holbrook stood on her porch, older than Caroline remembered. Grayer, more fragile. She opened the door. Diane, what are you doing here? I know I have no right, Diane said. Her voice was thin, apologetic. After everything I said, after how I failed you, I have no right to ask for anything. Then why are you here? Because I need to see her. Just once, my granddaughter, before I die. Carolyn stared at the woman who had blamed her for her own assault, who had told her to accept her husband's affairs, who had enabled Grant's cruelty for 38 years. Why should I let you? You should not. Diane's eyes filled with tears. I was a terrible mother-in-law, a terrible person. I spent my whole life looking the other way, pretending things were not as bad as they were. She pulled something from her purse, a check. This is everything I have, $1.2 million. For the foundation, for the women I failed by raising a monster. Carolyn looked at the check, at the woman holding it. A year ago, she would have slammed the door, would have felt satisfaction in denying Diane what she wanted. Now she felt something different. Compassion. She is asleep, Carolyn said, but you can come back tomorrow, for an hour, supervised. Diane's face crumpled with relief. Thank you, thank you. Do not thank me. This is not forgiveness. What you said to me, what you did, I will never forget. But Eleanor deserves to know her grandmother, even if that grandmother made terrible mistakes. She took the check, and this will help a lot of women, so thank you for that. Diane nodded, wiped her eyes. Tomorrow then, tomorrow. Caroline closed the door, stood in the darkness of her hallway, thought about forgiveness, about healing, about the complicated, messy truth that people were rarely all good or all bad, that even monsters had mothers who loved them, that even mothers could be wrong. She climbed the stairs to Eleanor's room, stood in the doorway, watched her daughter sleep, peaceful, innocent, unknowing. You will never know him, Carolyn whispered. You will never know the man who was supposed to be your father. You will only know the people who actually love you, the people who would never hurt you, the people who will protect you with everything they have. Eleanor stirred, murmured something, settled back into dreams. You will grow up knowing you are loved, knowing you are valued, knowing you are enough exactly as you are. She crossed to the crib, brushed a kiss against her daughter's forehead. That is my promise to you, Eleanor Webb. That is the legacy I am building. Not money, not power, not revenge. Love, just love. The morning sun woke her. October 16th, 1 year and 1 day since the spit. Carolyn stood in her garden, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise. The roses were blooming, red and pink and yellow. The ones she had planted herself her first spring in this house. They had grown tall and strong, spreading across the fence in a riot of color. Eleanor toddled toward her through the grass. Mama, She held up a flower, a dandelion grabbed from the lawn. Pretty, very pretty. Carolyn scooped her up, just like you. She carried her daughter inside, past the photos on the wall, past the kitchen where breakfast waited, past the living room where sunlight streamed through windows that faced east. He tried to break me. The thought came unbidden, one last echo of the past. He tried to make me believe I was worthless, crazy, unfit to be a mother. She set Eleanor in her high chair, started making pancakes, star-shaped of course. He thought if he took everything from me, I would have nothing left. The batter sizzled on the griddle. Eleanor banged her spoon against the tray. Outside, birds sang in the garden. But he was wrong. Caroline flipped the pancakes. Perfect golden stars. Because the things that matter most are not things anyone can take. The doorbell rang. Richard with groceries, Meredith with flowers. Patricia was something from the bakery, her family, chosen in blood. Together, they are things you take back. She opened the door, smiled at the people who loved her. Love, strength, dignity. They are things you take back. And Caroline Webb had taken back everything. The camera pulls back, through the kitchen window, past the garden with its riot of roses, past the white picket fence, a small house on a quiet street, a woman holding her daughter, a family gathered in the morning light, a life built from the ashes of destruction, a victory earned through suffering, a future claimed despite everything. On the screen, words appear. Grant Holbrook is serving 15 years in federal prison. He has never met his daughter. Brittany Mercer was released after 2 years for good behavior. She lives under an assumed name in another state. The video of her spitting in Caroline's face still appears whenever anyone searches her name. Dr. Harrison died in prison. Her medical license was never restored. The Webb Foundation has helped over 7,000 survivors of financial abuse. Carolyn Webb never remarried. She says she does not need to. She already has everything she needs. Eleanor Webb is now 5 years old. She knows nothing about her father. She knows only love. The sun rises higher, the birds sing louder. And somewhere in that small house on that quiet street, a mother holds her daughter and whispers the truth that took her 32 years to learn. You are enough, exactly as you are. You are enough.